Welcome to Flyover Conservative Podcast with David and Stacy Whited, where we break down current events and examine culture through the lens of conservative Christian values. Hello, Flyover family. Welcome. Oh my gosh, this is such a great day. I could not be more excited.
Big day.
It is huge.
Huge.
Excited to be here with you. If you are new to Flyover Conservatives, make sure you check us out on Rumble, rumble.com/Flyover Conservatives. Also, make sure you text us. This is very important so we can stay in touch with you because you never know in this world today where we might be.
Yeah, we know.
We're on Rumble.
We don't. There's no mystery. We know. A lot of these platforms are run by communists and they shut you off. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. So follow us on Rumble and text us so that we can have workarounds and beat the man at the man system.
Very true. Text 816-579-1144, 816-579-1144. Text the word flyover. That is one word, flyover. Our slogan here is, you can see it on my t-shirt, wake up, speak up, and show up. And we are going to be talking about that today.
Well, our sort of battle cry typically is on every episode to do something to help people wake up a little bit if that's where you're at. If you're already kind of awake, to start, speaking up a little bit more. And then once you start speaking up, like get off the couch, get out the house and actually show up.
Yep.
Well, we're past that today.
Yeah, we are.
We have the ultimate guest that's caused more people to do those three things than any single individual that I can think of in our country.
I know. Such an honor.
He is a wake up, speak up, and show up machine. And just say, as a listener, this is a warning and a disclaimer. Get your pen ready, sit down, get your mind right, get your heart right, get ready to receive, because you're about to have your brains blown with motivation and excitement and truth and something very rare in today's world, real wisdom.
Yes.
So get ready for it. Without further ado, General Michael Flynn.
Yay!
There he is.
Welcome.
Stacy, I was going to say you should fire him for cutting you off.
I know.
We were talking about, for the listeners, we were talking about your family, David and Stacy's family, prior to coming on here and having this thing live, I guess, or taped in live. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things happening right now. And as we were discussing, and I really want to make sure that your listeners understand what your vision is for this show and for our country, which is really, at the end of the day, it's to show up and do something.
Yeah.
And act.
Yes.
And it's not just waking up and standing up. It's showing up. It's doing more than you think you can. I used to, and I still do. I did it yesterday with a couple of young people. I always say, and I learned this as a young officer, I guess, in the military, even as a young child. It's like, what's your potential? What do you want to be? And go find out what it is that you want to be. But in order to be what you want to be, in order to maximize your potential as a human being, you are going to have to accept risk in your life. And you're going to have to take risk in your life. And as you get, young people, they don't even think about risk sometimes. They just sort of do things. And a lot of times they do stupid stuff. And that's okay, because we expect, that's how you learn, right? You make a mistake, you learn from it, and you don't make the same stupid mistake twice. You learn from it and you move on. You make new mistakes, right? And that's fine. And good parents will they'll provide top cover for those mistakes as time goes on. Well, now we're looking at the nation. We're looking at our country, and we're trying to figure out what's happening to our country. And people are, in many cases, they're afraid of the institutions in our country, right? They're afraid of what our country is going through. They're afraid of what it is that's happening, and they tend to fall back. When there's fear, it gets instilled, your shoulders shrink. I mean, there's a physical emotion to this whole thing. And what we have to really do is we have to sort of step back and sit back and start to really let our heart play into what is happening and start to feel what it is that I need to do as an American citizen, what I need to do as a faithful, freedom-loving person. And I need to start to think about, how do I maximize my potential? What are the risks? What are the new risks that I'm going to have to take, in order to get involved at my community level whether it's in a township or a parish or whatever, a county. And there's so many things that maybe we talk about a few here as we go, but and I don't want to steal everything here. I appreciate what you guys do. I appreciate what the message is that we are all trying to get out across this country. David, if you could raise those 2 documents that you showed me before we came on, because we're guided. We're really guided by 2 things. But then we have to. There you go. There you go. Beautiful. And really the Bible and the Constitution. Yep. I mean, so we are guided by words, but then we have to take action. And those words are powerful. There's some really, really powerful words. A word like creator, right? Which is mentioned, I think, in the Bible or in the Constitution at least 4 times. We are driven by the principles that we live by, which the 10 Commandments are found in the Bible. Our Bill of Rights are found in the Constitution. Those are the principles, the truths that we live by. And then the fulfillment of those truths is really, it's not just the words in the Bible or the words in the Constitution. The true fulfillment is really in how we then act in our lives to fulfill those promises that we have made to humanity, that we have made to each other. And when you talk about the 10 Commandments, you're talking about a document that's that's thousands of years old, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about the Constitution, it's really, I think we're into our 246th year, but it was a document that was actually created over hundreds and hundreds of years of thought and thinking and wisdom, and then vision on the behalf of our founders. I mean, incredible. And so now we're being tested, folks. Okay, so your listeners, now we're being tested. God isn't going to walk in and sprinkle fairy dust on our heads and then poof, we're going to be saved. I mean, that he creates warriors, and he creates others, who are legions of people that we must, because I do want to talk about, maybe as we go here over the next 30 minutes or so, I want to talk about what we discussed about prayer, because I think prayer, as I always have said, that prayer is the most powerful weapon system known to man. So how do we need to use prayer going forward? So I'll stop, get off my soapbox for a second.
Well,
and then that is so good.
I want to mention, we'll kind of backtrack a little bit, because I want to discuss a little bit of what was it that helped create a General Michael Flynn. But we're on this God thing right now, and I want to just drive this home 1 second, because we firmly believe in a hierarchy that has God at the top, and then man, and then society, and then government, and that government is established for the sole purpose of defending the rights of the individuals it's there to serve. And we're at a tug of war right now in our country between another side that believes the government is the highest, and then maybe society, and then maybe whatever, God's at the bottom, and the individual rights of the person are down at the bottom as well. But government is the ruling highest authority. I mentioned that in the beginning. I interrupted Stacy because we say, hey, if something were to happen, text us. Well, something happened. We're kicked off YouTube right now for a 13-minute video that didn't break one violation and ended.
That's a badge of honor.
And most of it was a prayer. Most of it was a prayer.
That's the scary
I would
part.
like that 13-minute clip to be shown at any church in the country. It was a positive message, and we're shut down because of that. So we have this like Hunger Games class of media elites and people that are controlling speech that are creating this. We put the Hunger Games thing on there because it's this feeling of, you have this New York, Washington, and then there's these the peasants in the rest of the country, the people who live in flyover country that actually would know how to take care of themselves if something happened, or set a trout line, or get up in the morning and build things, and that kind of stuff. There's this torn between, is it God, right, and man, or is it government above all else? And we sort of broke away from countries that had that thinking, that we came from kings. We came from that kind of a culture, but we're not there now. What do you say about that idea of the placement of government in the hierarchy? Is it there to serve us, or do we need to be like China, where you're afraid of jaywalking and hurting your social credit score? You're fearful of your
Yeah.
government because in China you can't put what you want on YouTube either. So there's a lot of similarities.
So let me take it sort of one piece at a time. First of all, send me that 13-minute link, and I'll post that all over social media. I mean, as soon as we're done, or send it to me now. So I'm serious. That a couple of things. First, family. Family is vital. Family is family. The family ecosystem in our nation, in the United States of America, has been disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
So why, like we like to use the phrase "fight like a Flynn," right?
Yep.
Fight like a Flynn. And so why in my family, my large family, I'm one of 9 brothers and sisters, Irish Catholic family. We're very Irish. Our family is very Irish, very, very. But we always sort of, we joked and we fought a lot in our family growing up, a little house and a little town.
Probably lots of broken things.
My father, yeah, a lot. My father was a retired sergeant from the Army, and he was a World War II Korea vet, very, very classic Irishman, but a good man. He taught us the one thing, which was the golden rule: treat others like you like to be treated. Right? That was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And in our family, that was how you were going to treat each other. Right? Don't do this, don't do that, and do this, do that. But treat others like you want to be treated. Don't look at people for any other thing other than how do they act? What do they say? What do they do? Right? Even more than what they say, what is it that they do?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then treat them like you like to be treated. That was number one. That really was derived from my father. The second thing was really from my mother. And all of my brothers and sisters, would totally agree with me because this is how we are as a fabric, as a fiber of a family. And my mother was a lifelong learner. I mean, she was educating herself. She got her law degree by the time she was 69 years old. 9 children. She's getting.
Wow.
She's like constantly.
Wow.
And then she's just a lifelong learner. But she was somebody that always used to tell us, no matter what, you go get that thing, that education. You can put it in your pocket and never use it, but you have it, and nobody can take it away from you. So this idea of treating others like you like to be treated, and be lifelong learners, meaning don't always just take the information that's put in front of you for granted or that it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And go do your own research. Go create your own ideas. Go write your own things, right? So be a lifelong learner. Never stop. It doesn't make any difference how old you are or how old you get. So those are really 2 critical components of our upbringing that kept us as a tight-knit family, even as we've gone on our own separate ways, whether it's in the military or whether it's in business or whether it's in the clergy or whatever. I mean, all the kinds of things that we have done as a family, that binding that has kept us together is so, so powerful. So now the second element of what you really were talking about, how were we created? So, and
Yeah.
I'll start with the Bible, but I'll make the analogy to our nation. And because really God started at the individual. He didn't start and say, here's heaven, and then we're going to build down from heaven. Mm-hmm. Right? Just as the nation and our founders were filled with wisdom because they studied. Talk about lifelong learners. I mean, it's, many of them were pastors. Some of them were pastors. Many of them were children of pastors. I mean, there's a great sort of legacy of these individuals of how much they sacrificed to include their lives to be able to give us what we wanted. But I would say that, just as God did, our founders, they actually started at the bottom. They started at the individual level. And so what people forget, our nation, our Constitution, just as the Bible is, it's built on the individual. It's created on the individual basis. It's created at the individual level. Mm-hmm. Individual liberties are the most sacrosanct, just like I mentioned earlier about the 10 Commandments. The most sacrosanct thing is yourself first. And if you don't if you don't understand yourself, if you can't define yourself, if you don't see yourself before you see everybody else, and you can't, it's like when you go in front of a mirror in the morning and you walk away from it, right? You're standing in front of a mirror, you're brushing your hair, you're brushing your teeth, you're the only one looking at yourself, and you walk away. If you're not the same person, then you got a problem. We got a problem. So you have to define yourself first. Individual liberties, individual rights and responsibilities. That's what started this country, because we were running from not just tyranny, we were running from this persecution of Christianity back it goes as far back as the 1200s, but really, you run it to the 1600s. And then all of a sudden you come here, there's a phrase that gets attributed to Ronald Reagan, and it's the shining city on a hill, because he used it in a speech in the 80s. And so if you look at the shining city on a hill speech, actually, I did a little research. So talk about lifelong learners. So I did research. And I was like, well, where did it come from? Because somebody said, I think George Washington said it. And I haven't found a place where George Washington said it in any of his writings or anything yet. But where I found it was a pastor by the name of Winthrop. And he said it in 1630. Man. And he was on board a ship coming. They were being persecuted, right? They were coming over to the New World. Wasn't the United States of America at the time, 1630, right? And Winthrop, who eventually became one of the first, I think he was the first mayor of Boston, right? So on board his ship in 1630, he's looking at the people in his church, on board a ship, right? Yeah. Coming across the Atlantic. They didn't know whether a hurricane was going to hit them or not. So he talks about a city on the hill in his sermon. It's really powerful. Wow. And he says to the people on the ship, some of you have very little means. Some of you have a lot of means because they had gold in their pocket or they had something, right? And so, but when we get to the new world, when we get to where we're going to be, we're all going to have to work together. And so he's telling each individual, here's what you have or you don't have. And they all knew what they had or don't have. How many people can you have on a wooden ship in 1630, right?
You get to know each other.
Right. So so the city on a hill, and he talked about the city on a hill. So I did, so he's a pastor. So I did a little bit further digging. And in Matthew 5:14, and I'm not a Bible guy at all. I'm not. I listen and I read it and I try to pay attention to the powerful commentary. But I think it's Matthew 5:14 actually talks about a city on a hill in the Bible. And so now you take that and you take Winthrop's sermon and you take Ronald Reagan's speech in the 1980s, only not that long ago in our lifetime, the late
1900s.
Right. Well, I mean, and you begin. Here I am talking about it. So the thread that's pulled from the Bible to a sermon to who we are as Americans.
Yeah.
Because if we want to remain the shining city on the hill for all others, all other freedom, faith loving people, it takes us back to what I started this diatribe on. It's about the individual liberties that we respect, that we desire as human beings. And then you build on top of that. Then you build the hierarchy. The founding fathers started with the individual and said, what must the individual have to be able to live freely, right? And then it was, now we're going to create, the next level, which is really constitutionally, it's at the, there's something called the doctrine of the lesser magistrates, right? Then they started to say, okay, there's a local level of community leaders, and many of them were pastors, right? I mean, you think about the Battle of Lexington Common, the Battle of Concord. So you think about that level of leadership at the community level, church level, and then you take it up to, and I'm just going to make a bigger leap from townships and counties to states' rights, right? To states' rights. And then they gave the federal government a few things to do, like protect,
Yeah.
Yep.
protect us from foreign invasion,
Mhm.
right? Protect our borders. Really, they didn't give the federal government a lot of things to do. They gave them some big things to do, but they didn't give them a lot to do. And what has happened over the existence of America, and that's what we're facing right now, folks.
Yeah.
So, not just the discussion that
Mhm.
that Stacy and David and I are having, but really what we're having with America, and it's through your show, and it's through many other places that I'm trying to go, is to remind people that it is us, it is we the people who will place our demands, our actions, our words. So when it's it's show up or make sure I got it right. It's wake up, speak up, and show up. Right?
Yep.
Well
Wake
done.
up, speak up, and show up. It's also time to act.
Mhm.
Maximize your potential as a human being. Make decisions about which risk you are willing to take, because we the people, as part of your background shows in this discussion, is so important. This nation, like humanity, was built on the individual and the individual promise that we make to each other, and then we rise up the chain, we rise up that ladder to make sure that those leaders, those elements above us, those components of government that are above us, they actually respond to us. They
Mhm.
don't. We don't respond to them. And what has happened is we've had a complete reversal of that, and now we are in a place. We're here. I mean, we are here. We've
Mhm.
arrived, and I don't like where we've arrived, but we've arrived not because God has abandoned us. He hasn't abandoned us.
Mhm.
I will tell you, if there's anything, and if I do wear my faith on my sleeve, it is because we are being tested. This nation, we the people, are being tested.
Yeah.
Freedom is something that's super important, but there's one thing that's more important than freedom, and there's one thing that can never be taken away from you, like your freedom can be taken away from you, and
Mhm.
that's your faith. There's a lot of things in the Bible, there's a lot of things in our Constitution, there's a lot of things in ourselves that you can come and you can stop me from being able to go outside my door, right? I mean, there's people that fear even going outside these days
Mhm.
because they're
Yep.
afraid of running into some crazy federal institutional, governmental person that's going to stop you and arrest you for doing
Mhm.
nothing but proselytizing your faith.
Mhm.
So the one thing more important than freedom is our faith. And then you have to, the
So good.
number one thing there is faith in ourselves, faith in our individual selves. I I was persecuted for many
Yeah.
years,
Mhm.
but I never allowed anybody to define who I was.
Wow.
And that,
Huge.
and to me, it's like we have to define ourselves. We as Americans, we the people, have to
Mhm.
define who we want to be. We have to define ourselves as Americans. And I
That
know
is
what
so
an
good.
American is. I know what an American value is. I know what an American principle is. And then we have to then work together. And this is not, I have a really hard time saying Democrat as a political ideology, because I was a Democrat all my whole life.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just we were in my family, we were pro-life, pro-family, pro-business. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, but even that flipped on its head.
Mhm.
And then and so what we're really facing is we're facing an ideological shift in our country from this beautiful experiment in democracy, which we describe as a constitutional Republican form of government, to a much different ideology. And that's really, it
Yeah.
starts with socialism, it transitions to
Mhm.
Marxism, and then it goes to full-on communism.
Mhm.
And that's because there are forces that are godless forces
Yeah.
in our society
Yep.
here in America. And what we have lost sight of is that if we don't pay attention to America, if we don't pay attention to our individual rights and freedoms in our individual communities, right? Faith in our communities, right? It's not faith in ourselves, faith in each other,
Mhm.
faith in our communities, then we are going to lose what we have.
Man,
And
that is so true.
that's why I am so passionate and determined about getting people fired up at the local level. You know, I
Yeah.
use the phrase local action can have a national impact. Local
Definitely.
action, national impact. And so, you know, we talked about the mama bears as an example in Iowa, but there are other examples. There's other examples out there across this country where people are stepping, you know, getting off their rear ends off the couch, so to speak, to use a metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
and they're now taking risk. They're losing friends. They're losing clients if they're small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They're losing members of their family in some cases, as a, you know, because they're people in the family can break apart because they don't believe in what you're espousing. I mean, so there's a lot of risk, but you're going to find yourself. Number one, you're going to find yourself. You start to take that risk in something that you believe in. You know, it's like the old adage of, you know, if you love what you do for a living, then you're never going to work a day in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a lot of people out there, particularly women, because I've been very adamant about the role of women in our society even more today, because partly I think because I had a strong mom and I have 4 sisters who would kick my rear end if I didn't talk about it. But I think that the demographic shift in our nation has really shifted, and it's not just the demographic shift; it's the ideological shift of the culture of America. You know, man's roles in the home versus women's roles in the home, and the raising of children and the raising of society in general. So, maybe that's a show for another day, but I think it's really important that we understand how we are as a society. And number one is to define yourself and decide.
Mm-hmm.
Act. Don't just show up. Act. When you show up, what do you do when you show up?
Do.
It's
play.
so important.
Got to move.
I mean,
something I wanted to point out to you, because this was an interesting article. Mario Murillo wrote it. It was called The Black Pill. And he was talking about, we've all, seen the Matrix with the red pill and the blue pill. That's pretty obvious what's happening there. But he said what's happening now is Americans are getting black pilled. And just one of the paragraphs said, black-pilled Americans have concluded politics and culture are so corrupt, there's no longer any use in trying to save them. Think of the hundreds of thousands of Republicans who stayed home during the U.S. Senate runoff elections in Georgia. Instead, they believe the only viable course of action is to pull the plug and fade to black. And I thought this was really interesting because if we do that as Americans, we are hurting our kids and our grandkids. We are putting them in a prison. The time is now to act. If we don't act, if we don't do something, if we continue to bury our head in the sand, we're not going to have a country anymore. We're not going to recognize this country. And I think it was really important what you were saying. It's our job to get involved in our local community. I don't care what it is, if it's on the school board or whatever that looks like, a poll watcher, but we have to get involved. We cannot, and the article talked about Christians. Christians were a major part of that, burying their head in the sand and saying, I don't want to go there. We have to go there. We owe it to our grandkids and to our children.
Apathy is the enemy.
Yeah. So I did not read that article, but I will give you my 2 cents on what I believe we are facing. So that article, and just the metaphor of black pill is, and this is sort of what we're involved in. We are in a battle between darkness and light. Right? So just the notion of black pill, it means darkness, right? There's a darkness to that word, or to those 2 words if it's not one word, right? Black pilled, I guess, is to use it as a word. That connotes darkness. If people want to stay in the dark, then be prepared for the consequences of darkness.
Right.
I do not wish to stay in the dark. I want to see the light, because I know the consequences of being in the light. Being in the light actually can bring a lot of attention, to you, and now back to what I've been saying about, who are you as an individual? You define yourself. But being in the light also allows exposure of the truth, right?
Yeah.
And light connotes truth. Darkness connotes evil, and evil is a lack of understanding and a lack of truth in our society.
Yep.
And so there's so many components of that, because he touches on people voting or not voting, right? That's a darkness in our society. So what we want to make sure of is we have to make sure that we, as Americans, as freedom loving, as faithful people, and this is not just for Christians, this is for anybody who's in fear today, to move toward the light. Move toward the light. I used to as a guy in the military, young officer, I used to lecture, for some of the priests, because I'd go to church on a Sunday, and it'd be like, sometimes it'd be nobody, sometimes it'd be 16 people. On Easter it'd be packed, right? And the priest would say, he'd go, "Hey, I need somebody to lecture. Do you know how to read?" So I'd go up there. I go up there and lecture. And I don't know why I'm telling you this story, but it's about, it has to do with coming toward the light, coming toward the truth. And this one particular priest that I got into the habit of helping out, great guy, and so he used to put ropes at the back of the church. Like he literally would cordon off like half the pews in the church, because he didn't want people sitting in the back.
Right.
Yes.
And he would rope them off. So I would actually go out. I would rope off the pews for him. I'd get there a few minutes early. I'd rope them off, and then he would tell people as they were coming in, because normally the priest marches out, with the cross and all that. He would actually stand there as people were coming into the church. Doesn't matter how many. And in the military, usually there's a few more that would show up. But he would tell people, "No, I want you to come forward. I want you to come closer." Because he wanted to make it feel personal. And so that's what I'm telling the American people. You got to make this personal.
Yeah.
And you've got to move towards the light. And you've got to determine how it is that you need to act. Not everybody has a skill set. Not everybody has a certain set of talents, but everybody has something. A woman told me one time, because I made a comment on a podcast a while back, that, and she was sending me into my legal defense fund. Thank God for the American people. And just a huge thank you to the American people that supported me and my family. But she would send me a little pittance of her Social Security check every month.
Wow.
At the end. So she I mean, it's like, it brings, it's emotional.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I said one time, this woman who had nothing gave me everything that she had. And so it's so powerful. And she got a hold of me. She I had corresponded with her actually over the time of the persecution. And she sent me a scathing letter. And she said, "Don't you ever say I have nothing."
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And she knew exactly who I was talking about, because I described that particular thing. And she says, "Don't you ever," and I could feel her emotions in the letter that she sent me. She says, "Don't you ever say I have nothing. I have everything. In fact, I have more than most people have, because I have my faith."
That's huge.
I mean, super, super powerful. So none of us have nothing. We all have something.
Yes.
And so what I am telling all of you, I'm telling everybody, all your listeners, that go toward the light. Don't listen and don't follow the dark path that a small group of people in this country who do have power, who do wield a lot of power. And that's why you guys were censored off of YouTube, right? That should be a badge of honor. That's why.
Yay!
Right. That's why, the media doesn't want to talk about fraudulent elections, right? That's why the media they don't want to talk about what's happening with COVID and these shots that we're being told you must take. Otherwise you can't attend something. You can't get on an airplane. You can't go someplace unless you have a shot. I mean, all of my body, my choice, all the arguments that have been stated out there. So my message to everybody as we wrap this up, and thank you guys for having me on, and we'll do this again. My message to everybody is, is when you show up, as you guys talk about, act and show up and move toward the light. Find your potential, maximize your potential. You're going to assume risk, take the risk, and get involved. Get involved. You may not feel that you can change those people in Washington, D.C., or those people in Austin, Texas, or Tallahassee, Florida, or Providence, Rhode Island, which are the capitals of states. You can change your behavior at the local level, and you can change the behavior at the local level if you decide to get involved at the local level in your communities. I mean, there are a lot of volunteer positions that go unfilled, tens of thousands. There are a lot of school board positions that go unfilled. And so what happens is darkness creeps in.
Yep.
And they take over those school boards. And all of a sudden people go, well, that's nice of so-and-so, Stacy to run. And all of a sudden you find out Stacy's a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialist Party of America, and she's going to force critical race theory down the throats of our children. And everybody goes, what happened? What happened? How did that happen? That's because somebody was sitting on their couch complaining and not doing.
Yes.
So, we have to stop complaining and start doing. And that's why I say local action has a national impact. So get involved, find the light. And the first light to find is the light in yourself.
Woo, that's so good.
That's amazing. Well, Jennifer, I got a couple of announcements to make, and I want people to know, I want to know how to find you, some places coming up that they can see you. And we have a special gift for every listener at the end of this episode. So guys, get your pens ready. Stay on board, because we prepared something special for everybody watching today as a free gift of something that's going to help you in this digital battle. First and foremost, one is we are in a real war today, but it's not the rockets and bullets. It's mental. A battle of ideas, good ideas versus bad ideas. Censorship's a problem, because when you can't put a good idea on the table any longer, a good idea, just, bad food looks good if that's all there is on the table. You're hungry. Our battle is fought today, sadly enough, kind of with memes, with digital warriors, with people. So, we have an Instagram page, and we're trying to create good content. For those of you watching and you're 55, 60, 65, and you're fighting your grandkids or nephews, you need to learn to grab a hold of this idea of messages sent, big ideas in a small package, and memes are kind of where it's done. So check out Flyover Conservatives on Instagram, instagram.com/Flyover Conservatives. Check it out, because we're scouring the world, scouring the web, coming up with good ideas to put things on there. Find that available, and then expose yourself to good ideas. Got to be in the room when history's being made. Yes. History's going to be made coming up at a few key events in our country. Now, there's a lot of things popping up, but we got one coming up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Another one's coming up in Colorado Springs. Then in November, we're going to be in Texas. General Flynn's going to be at each of these events. Stacy and I are going to be at each of these events. We rented a ballroom. We're doing a party for Flyover Family. We did that back in Tampa. We got it coming up at these events where you can meet Mel Kay and Scott McKay and Ann Vandersteel, and I don't know if General Flynn would ever want to come by our party, but
he's always welcome.
But get your picture made with some of these people, because then you take that light back home. You go, you get your battery charged, then you take those better ideas back home and put yourself in a position to put a good idea next to the bad ideas in your own local community. So
for tickets for that, just text 918-851-0102. 918-851-0102 and text the word flyover. They're going to give you a discount, but it also will put us in contact with you so we can let you know where the party's going to be.
You want to be at the party. All the cool kids are going to be there. That's where things are shaking and baking and happening. And we're going to have a lot of fun at those events, but you want to be in the room, because when this story is told, when history books are written, these events are going to be taught as a tide-turning, mental shifting force that helped wake people up. And I tell you what, you want to be prepared to how to fight in your own local community, and you can do that with better ideas.
And then also, to follow General Flynn, go to americasfuture.net, americasfuture.net. So you can find out more there about him and what he's doing. So
put that up on the website here.
americasfuture.net. Thank you, Colton,
And
for putting
all
that
of
up.
these references will be in the notes below. If you listen to this on Apple Podcast or Pandora or anywhere else, Rumble, BitChute, they're going to be in the notes below. All the links, all the data, everything is going to be right there. And then the big gift. General Flynn, I think that you're going to like this. When we met you in Tulsa, you actually brought some young children up and you read part of the Constitution with them and you impressed upon them the personal responsibility of each individual sitting down. I think you challenged,
so powerful.
You challenged everybody in the room, like, and antagonistically, you poked everybody in the room. How many of you have actually read the Constitution from cover to cover in one sitting, and you didn't call people out, but you poked them? And I'd read it, but not cover to cover, and I'm like, man, and I buy these. I have these in our spare rooms when people visit. I have them in our bathrooms at our home. I have copies of our Constitution, and I started waking up like, man, more people can sit down in one evening and read this Constitution themselves, but they're like, well, I don't have it. Where do I get it? And so we're going to give a free gift to every single person watching today. If you text GF, that stands for General Flynn.
Woohoo!
We didn't want people to misspell it, or just GF. Don't do anything creative. Just letter GF. Text to that number. You're going to get a free
816-579-1144. 816-579-1144.
And you'll get a free downloadable version of the Constitution, the articles, the whole bit. And can you just leave people with a message of reading this themselves and taking personal responsibility of reading it? If they text this number, everybody has access to put this on their phone. They can watch it themselves. They can listen to it themselves, and they can share it with a friend. They can share it with a nephew that just graduated from some socialist university and thinks they know everything. It's like, hey, sit down and read this with them and see what they think. But we're going to make that available to every single listener if you text that number. And I don't know if just in closing, if you could just impress upon people the value of personally reading the Constitution.
Well, first, thanks very much. And to everybody, wake up, speak up, and show up, and go toward the light, move toward the light, stay away from the darkness. The Constitution is 4,500 words. It takes the average reader about 30 minutes.
Wow.
And so I really appreciate the fact that you guys are gifting this to everybody, to every listener. I think it's amazing that you're doing that. And I really strongly encourage people to, this is how you can get involved. This is how you can gain wisdom. And actually, it will bring you strength. It will bring you courage to really reestablish accountability in this country, because we, the people, are the ones that are going to hold everybody accountable at the end of the day. And we're going to do it through the power of prayer. We're going to do it through the power of our own lives, and we're going to do it through the power of collectively working together to reestablish who we are as a nation.
Man, that's so good. Thank you
I'm
so much, General
honored to
Flynn.
partner with you. Honored to know you. We'd love to have you back as things progress. I'd love to hear your endorsements of candidates. I'd love to hear some of your take on how do people judge and evaluate candidates, their leadership skills. So I'd love to have you back if you'd agree to that and continue this conversation.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. God bless you guys.
God bless you. Thank you.